Good early afternoon. This is the Blue Plate Special. I'm Andy Andrews. You have joined us live here at Wisdom Harbor Studio from the Wharf in Orange Beach, home of the Marlin sculptures and the unbelievable escalator sculptures that we have spread across the wharf here. You need to see them sometime. Good early afternoon, everybody. I am thrilled to be here with you. I've already seen Judson is on. Hey, Marcy Taylor. Ann Jeanette. Irene Robinson. Hey, Christy Woods, my sister. Jeff Herring. Hey, buddy. Hagen Mack. Viola Floyd. And I will have a wonderful day. Thank you. Sarah Russo's. Good to see you. Dave Larder, a whole bunch of you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Will SB be making an appearance today? I don't know. Will she? Matt, will SB be making an appearance today? Will she?
I'll check with her.
Okay, just check with her. I'd like to say hi to everybody. Hi on Instagram. Hi to the Twitter crew. Brian Backen's Twitter crew. And if you have not press the notification button. Please press the notification button. Hey, David Smith. Good to see you. Kevin Miller. Kevin Corcoran. Hey, buddy. If you haven't pressed that notification button, if you're on Facebook, please press the notification button. That way, when we're on the air, you'll just be automatically notified, because we don't really know what day of the week we're going to do. People say, David Sams. Hey, David. People say, what day of the week are you going to do this? And we don't know. I mean, I'm not kidding you. An hour ago, Matt said, are we doing a Blue Plate today? And I said, well, what days do you think we can do them this week? And we said, well, we can't do them any other days. Then we're doing one today, okay? Because we got the stuff that's conflicting in the other things. So, hey Nadine. If you're on what is it? If you're on YouTube, please press that subscription button. And if you're not on YouTube, later, if you don't mind, just go to YouTube and press the subscription button. That would really help. Okay. There's Kevin Williams. Did you see Kevin as the guest on the Blue Plate Special? Was that just last week? Ooh, that seems like a long time ago. Listening to my Kevin Williams stuff. Hey, Dan Stone, how are you doing up there in the tropical island of Duluth? You know, I watched Dan Stone. Dan sent me a video of Abraham, his 13-year-old son, doing something that I don't understand how anybody learns how to do. But he's just like standing there and did a backflip. I don't know. I don't understand how you practice that. There are some things that I really don't get. How are you going to like? You remember the movie Fun in Acapulco, the movie with Elvis, Fun in Acapulco, and where the cliff diving thing. How do you practice that? I mean, how do you practice it? I mean, at one point, if you end up like a few feet short and you're on the rocks, it's like, I don't think I'll try that again. I mean, how do you practice that? My shirt, by the way, is from Sand Dollar Lifestyles, right down here. It's the cornerstone of the wharf, and this is my Sand Dollar shirt today. Be sure to watch out for the podcast that comes out tomorrow, and it'll be, if you're on the West Coast, it'll be in at 3:15 a.m. You might wonder, if you've watched for just a little while, you might wonder, why does he keep saying it's going to come out at 3:15 on the West Coast? You need to go back. I don't even know what show that was, but we got this really nasty letter from some woman who, how many toes did she have? 3 toes. She told us that in the letter, but it's a letter about how that podcast coming in at 3:15 woke her up, and she said it like 3:15, 3:15, 3:15, and that it woke her up. And we're all in this letter thinking, turn your phone off, or mute your email. But anyway, it was pretty funny, and so we continued to talk about that around here. Matt, who is the podcast this week?
This week is actually the Just Jones podcast.
Really? Okay, so this week, tomorrow, is the Just Jones podcast. It's I think we have me carefully reading. How much?
The first prologue, chapter 1, chapter 2.
Yeah, the first 3 chapters. So anyway, be something to listen to in your car. Mike Williams, you subscribe to YouTube. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And George Cosler, you're asking, when are the shirts for Wisdom Harbor Studios going to be ready for purchase? That is a very good question. And I'm looking out in the studios, and they aren't there. So it ain't going to be today. But soon. Okay, very soon. Because there are some coming. In fact, there's some amazing stuff coming that we're going to be able to tell you about. Hey, today, the other day we talked about the 11 million people. We read it, and we told you there's a special on just for the audio and the new book, which the new book is like normally $16.95. And so for 11 days from the other day, it's 11 days and $11. So on andyandrews.com, and I guess, Matt, you can put up a link to the thing. And so if you'll put up a link, we've got 7 more days that you can get them for $11 and give them away. And what we're going to do today, if it's okay with you guys, is in this book, they asked me, I get asked questions about this book a lot. I'm also curious about as to how many people can't remember the name of this book. That's just funny to me. Now, I don't tell anybody when they mess it up, but it is very funny to me that people come up and say, I love your book. That book about 1 million people, that's just very, Or people say, hey, your book about 10,000 people? Yes, I do. But it's like somehow that number 11 million just doesn't register with people. But it's how do you kill 11 million? By the way, did you know that when I was writing this book, I wrote it in longhand. For whatever reason, I was traveling. I wrote it in longhand and had notes all over, and was in the Orlando airport, and a lady from TSA opened my stuff, and right there on top was a bunch of pages in a row, and I had written on one of them, you could see it very clearly, how do you kill 11 million people? And she stepped back, looked at me. She was about to press the alarm, baby. I'm just telling you, it was just about all over right there. And she looked at me, and I said, wait. That's a book. That's a book I'm writing. I'm a writer. I'm not a very good one, but I'm a writer, and that's a book that I'm writing, and it's about the Holocaust. But you could just see, she opens up and says, how do you kill them? It looks like plans. And so, anyway. But people ask questions, and so there's a conversation in the book. And so I figured we would go ahead and do this and let you hear it. Let you hear the questions and the answers. And who just said that? From Edmondson, from Melissa Edmondson, says, hi, our pastor just mentioned this book and he got the number right. That is great. I tell him thank you so much. But it's not just this book. Hey, PC, it's not just this book. People actually get all the book titles wrong. It's become just hilarious in my family because people, Polly, the boys, we're somewhere, and people will come up and they'll say, your book, The Traveler's Guide. I love The Traveler's Guide. People will say, hey, that book, The Watcher, about the old man, I love The Watcher. People, let's see, I've heard The Lost Coin. Whew, that book is The Lost Coin. The Heart Monitor. The Heart Monitor just tore me up. What else? And occasionally people come up and they'll say things that I have no idea what they're talking about. They'll say, that thing that you do, in the children's book, The Boy with the Elephant, I love it. I'm like, I think PC said she's heard the 1 year parenting course. Yeah, it's 100 years, but you can do it for one. It'll be fun. All right, let's do this. We're going to go with the conversation. One of the questions was, what are you trying to illustrate with this book? And by the way, Matt, I don't see any more names up here. Just
Because they're still coming in.
oh, huh? Oh, there we go. Okay, I was just telling Matt because I wasn't seeing any names, so maybe he was just trying so that I would not get confused. Ross says, yeah, we get confused easily. Yeah, me too. Okay, so the question was, what are you trying to illustrate with this book? And, my answer is, other than the subtitle, which is Why the Truth Matters More Than You Think, I think this book illustrates the principle of the path. We discussed the principle of path in my book, The Traveler's Summit. Because in The Traveler's Summit, when the historical figures, Winston Churchill and George Washington Carver, Joan of Arc, and all these others are gathering to figure out how to solve this particular challenge, these characters inadvertently show that history itself is a path that can be examined at any point along the way to predict future results. And so that's one of the things that I'm wanting to show is kind of a point of the book, is to examine the principle of the path, because history is just like a broad version of our individual lives. I mean, do we see a pattern in our good choices? Kevin Perkins, I see Charlie Cooper. Hey, you guys, 2 duck hunters right in a row. So history is a broad version of our individual lives. Do we see a pattern in our good choices? Do good choices lead to good results? Of course they do. So let's continue to make good choices, just like the ones that have proven beneficial to our lives. On the other hand, do we see a pattern in some of the bad choices we've made? Did those bad choices seem to connect the miserable dots that sank our life's results ever lower? Of course they did. Okay, so let's determine that we will never make those choices again. See, the only way we have to know a person who aspires to lead us is to listen to what that person says and watch what that person does. So frankly, really what I might think of any current or past leader of the United States, in a way, should be irrelevant to you, because the questions that are most important in your life in regard to this subject should be, what criteria do you use to determine who leads your family? And what do you think? I think people read this book and they say, are you a Republican or a Democrat? And as I stated in the author's note, I'm not an us or a them kind of person. I'm a we kind of person. And I am after finding the best. I think that conversations have to continue, right? I consider myself like I'm a concerned American citizen who demands integrity from those who seek to lead our country. And frankly, I believe that candidates from both parties have lied to the American people. I also believe that many are slipping dangerously close to creating a habit of lying and rationalizing that their purpose in doing so is for our own good. So I never wanted a discussion of this book to devolve into like partisan bickering, all right? I didn't write this book in order to compare any person or, to Hitler or the Nazis, any president or previous leadership, Republican or Democrat. And so it might be interesting to know, though, that there's a phrase I use in the book, and the phrase is redistribution of wealth. And I didn't use that phrase in order to draw a comparison between Hitler and any specific person. And actually, I tried to find another way to phrase the point, but ultimately because it illustrated the Fuhrer's style of saying what he wanted and, what the audience wanted to hear, and because those particular words actually came from Hitler's mouth, I opted to go with what he really said. And it's just become kind of standard operating procedure for many politicians to say whatever's needed in order to get elected. And I think this has got to stop. History's list is deep and wide and filled with the names of tragic governments whose citizens did not stop it. I got into a conversation with a friend the other day over email, and my friend said, where is the backbone? Where are the backbones of America's leaders? And my answer was, I think that the backbones of America's leaders are genetically connected to their reelection campaigns. I hate to say that, but I really do. I do think that it seems to me that before anybody thinks about telling the truth, they think about whether it will allow them to get reelected or not. And this is not one of those questions, but I will just tell you this. I think if there's anything that can really put our country on a different path quickly, it would be term limits. Unfortunately, the only people who can create term limits, we talked about the 545 people, the only people who can create term limits in this country are the people who have a vested interest in keeping, us not having term limits. Let's see, here's a question. Do you think the German population that allowed Hitler to lead them was a nation of fools? Not necessarily. Okay, Germany at that time did not have the benefit of examining the history of the kind of tragedies of which they eventually became a part. They were certainly a nation of misguided people, misled people. They assumed that the leaders in whom they had placed their faith would put their best interests in the forefront. They were sincere in those beliefs, but as we know now, they were sincerely wrong. Here's a question. Are the American people fools? I think the jury is still out on that question. I've always considered the American people smart and industrious. Unfortunately, we've all known smart people who have done foolish things. And as a group, when more than 100 million of us don't bother to vote in federal elections, it certainly underscores the apathy portion of a nation's fatal sequence. So are we too trusting? Probably. Are we downright gullible? I'm afraid the evidence supports that. But are we fools? I'll give it a not yet. Here's the question. Are you saying the United States will be the site of the world's next Holocaust? No. I am not saying that it will happen. I am saying that it could happen. I mean, that's the whole point of the book, right? History shows that any people who are sheep-like in following their leadership, so long as their personal interests are satisfied, and may one day awaken to find that their nation has changed in dramatic ways. It doesn't take many people to lead a nation in a direction that has serious repercussions on the liberty of other people. Indeed, I think most of us will agree that we have already given up liberties for various reasons, and we may never get them back. Under certain circumstances, things can take a very bad turn very quickly. And the cycle has repeated itself with many societies throughout history, despite the solid foundation of our culture and of our political system. America's not immune. Santaniya is a philosopher, George Santaniya, and he said, he's the one who said, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. I think there is I think there might be a caveat to that now. So George Santaniya said, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Now think about that. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. See, I think we've gotten to a point in our nation now where it's not a matter of not remembering the past. We live in a nation full of people who never paid any attention to it in the first place. And we've got a nation of people right now who they never learned about the past. I want to pause here and tell you something that I've thought about recently. I live in Alabama, and a couple of years ago, I went to an economic impact convention for Alabama. Like 1,000 people there, some of the most important people in the state. Not me. I was there to speak, okay? I was the only non-important person. There were other governors and senators, everybody speaking. And I'll tell you something very curious to me about that experience. There were several things that I noticed. Now, I watched the entire thing. Okay, I was there for 2 days, and I watched the entire thing. It was Alabama, okay? It's my state. And so economic impact. Hey, Martin, is economic impact, and so I'm watching this whole thing. And there were several things that hit me. One of the things that hit me was, now it wasn't our current governor, It was the governor before. All right. And I was trying to think, several of our politicians have changed. All right. But both senators spoke, the governor, a bunch of different people. And with only one exception, every one of these key people who spoke, they came in to speak, and they spoke, and they left. They didn't listen to what anybody else said. They didn't listen to any of the other leaders. They didn't listen to what any of the other leaders said. They didn't, there were some panels of business people. They didn't listen to them. And I thought it was very curious that what they said, I realized halfway through the convention, I've heard this over and over and over. And they said for Alabama to have an economic impact, we've got to put the money in education. We've got to have more money for education. If we don't have more money for education, we're going to fall behind. And if we don't educate our children are the future. And see, there's a lot of stuff in there that's true. Now, you guys know me, and so you know that I might say something like this. There's a lot of stuff in there that's true. It's just not the truth. Okay? Yeah, our children are the future. Yeah, they do need to be educated. But I want to tell you something. I've lived in Alabama, except for 1 year. I've lived in Alabama all my life. And I have heard people talk about more money for education my entire life. And they've always gotten more money for education. And as far as I know, we're still 49. I mean, what do we say here? Thank God for Mississippi. That's what we say. Because if it wasn't for Mississippi, we'd be number 50, I guess, right? But that hasn't changed, and yet we've added money. And so as I'm sitting here and listening to this stuff and listening to these people talk about the economic industry of Alabama and how we get that going and all like that, and how they said that, it occurred to me that I've heard that my entire life. I've heard them say it my entire life. We're still, number 49. And I thought, I don't know that it has to do with the money as much as it has to do with what we're teaching. The money can't be it. I mean, if you looked at a church and this church was great at one point, and all of a sudden, the pastor starts doing weird things, and then the minister of music and the education, they're starting to do weird things, and then all of a sudden, before long, the church starts hemorrhaging people, and then instead of it being full for 2 services, it's like half full for one. Some gajillionaire could look at that and say, it's a shame that church has gone downhill, and if we're going to have, a spiritual presence in America, we got to support this kind of stuff. And it's a shame that church has gone downhill. So I'm going to give this church $1 million. You know what you have there? You have a bad church with $1 million to spend. But it's not a lack of money that took them there. Now, what I'm saying is that when we look at what the philosopher said, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. That may have been true at one point, but now we've got a couple of generations of people who don't really know anything about the past because we're not teaching it. We're teaching different things. And in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I'm not sure we're teaching the right things. In Alabama, Algebra 2 is required. Not just algebra, But to get out of high school, Algebra 2 is required. Okay? And so I'm just telling you, we have some kids, they can do Algebra 2. I mean, I'm just telling you, they can do Algebra 2. Now, they can't balance their checkbook. They can't work in a store and give change. Do you understand that in McDonald's there are charts? When somebody's working the window or working, there's a chart that doesn't just tell you what the change is. It shows what a nickel looks like and a dime looks like and how many of them you give. Really? I mean, but, you know, get out of high school because you can do Algebra 2. And so I'm just saying, economics is not taught everywhere anymore. Just simple economics. And history is on the chopping block, believe me. And if you don't believe it, if you want to know how important your system of education in your area, if you want to know how important history is to them, what do you call it? I mean, the public school system in your area. If you want to know how important history is to them, look who's teaching it. Because you know who teaches it in this area? Coaches. I mean, we have math teachers that teach math and science teachers that teach science, and the assistant football coach teaches history. So, I mean, nothing against football coaches, all right? But I'm just saying, somewhere along the line, we got to pay attention to the truth and not be stopping at what's true all the time. I think we can change the direction of our country, but we have to understand our portion of the history of our country is being written today. So, what is your contribution? I get asked a lot, who is lying to our country right now? And I don't answer that question. I just don't answer that question because my purpose is not to answer that question for you or to write a book that answers that question for you. Because the purpose of this book is for you to learn how to answer that question for yourself, to get your children and grandchildren to a point where they can answer that question for themselves. I think my point is that each of us has got to stop blindly believing everything somebody with an agenda says. We've got search engines now, and we've got YouTube, and it's a fairly simple thing to start to at least verify a politician's promises. You certainly verify their voting record and their personal life and so on, and so I think that's something. Let's see, somebody says, well, why did you choose to write this book right now? I chose to write this book because I think our nation is at a tipping point. Regardless of political views, people everywhere can sense it. Did you know that the United States of America is the longest tenured government in the world? I mean, there are countries older than us. But as far as one continuous form of government, we're the oldest, or the last, depending on how you look at it. And if we don't demand honesty and integrity from our leadership now and reward that integrity with our votes, our leaders are going to lack the fortitude to make the hard decisions that have got to be made to maintain or change a course. And if our nation is in a state of crisis, then we need to change before it's too late to choose the direction of that change. Everything changes, okay? Everything changes. But sometimes we need to stop and realize that since everything changes, we should be involved in directing the way it changes, right? We need to course correct in a lot of cases and to find the best people to make that happen. Some of them are already in office, okay, but they need our help to surround them with men and women who will do what they believe is right and true. And so I wrote this book for you to use as a tool. I wrote it for you to give away. I wrote it for you to discuss. I wrote it for some of you to preach about and for you to read to your children. We've created a curriculum that's absolutely free. And this is being taught in a bunch of schools, okay? But the curriculum, you go on andyandrews.com, and where do they go to from there, Matt? I don't go on my own site.
Store at the top.
Go on store.
And then it's under books.
And then the curriculum is under books?
Sorry. It's under media and resources.
It's under media and resources, okay? And it's absolutely free. And so any teacher, no matter the school, can download the curriculum. But more than ever, I think we need to be inspired to participate. There's a question that obviously there's been public debate and commentary from time to time about one situation or another, but have the American people ever been specifically cautioned about the long-term consequences of electing leaders who lack strong character? Have we ever been specifically cautioned about the long-term consequences of electing leaders without character? Yes. Now, few people remember it, okay, but in retrospect, it's chilling to note the accuracy with which this was delivered. On the occasion of our nation's 100th birthday, get this, this is in the centennial address that the president at the time made to Congress. As President James Garfield issued a warning that was widely reported in the press at the time. He said, "Now, more than ever before, the people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body is ignorant, reckless, and corrupt, it is because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it is filled with brave, intelligent, and pure members of Congress, it's because the people of America demand these high qualities to represent them in the national legislature." Then he added this. He said, "If 100 years from now, the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise, the culture, and the morality of the nation do not aid in controlling the political forces." Remember what we talked about the other day? There's 320 million of us. There's 545 of them. Can the 320 million hope to control the 545? You would think so. How can we tell if a politician is telling the truth. Is there a way to know for sure? Well, you remember the old joke, right? How do you know if a politician's lying? If he's moving his lips? It's not so funny anymore, is it? Obviously, there's no certain way to know at the moment that something is said. But remember, past performance serves to reveal future behavior. One of the things Jones said in the first Noticer book, this is one of the things that Jones said I've never forgotten. He said, you can walk into a forest and never look up, and you can know what kind of tree you're under. You can know the circumstances, because all you got to do is pick up a leaf. You pick up a leaf and you know what's above you. Is it an oak? Is it an elm? Is it a maple? Is it spring? Fall? Is it summer? Is it winter? Is the tree old? Is it a young tree? Is it healthy? Is it diseased? You don't even have to look up. You know, Jones said you can know that just by picking up one leaf. And Jones said people drop leaves too. And you only need one or two to see what they're like. So past performance serves to reveal future behavior. A person who has exhibited a pattern of lying is a liar. I know that sounds kind of rough, but can you think of another way to put it? This is why character in our leadership is so important. In my book, The Traveler's Summit, Abraham Lincoln says to Joan of Arc, does adversity build character? Then he answers the question. He says, it does not. Adversity does not build character. Almost all people can stand adversity of one sort or another. If you want to test a person's character, give him power. Continuing, Lincoln says, now, since we're concerning ourselves here with the very future of humanity, let me add one more thing. Power corrupts. Trust me on this, and because power corrupts, humanity's need for those in power to be of high character increases as the importance of the position of leadership increases. We're discussing character, correct? Not intelligence. Some of the most intelligent leaders in history have brought disaster to their nations because intelligence is powerless to modify character. Great leadership is a product of great character. And this is why character matters. Who should we be listening to? We should listen to ourselves. We should listen to common sense and be mindful of and then heed what we already know to be true. And we desperately need to be honest with ourselves. We must recognize that as voters, we sometimes accept a lie when it suits our own self-interest. Now get this, okay? I'm going to say this again. We must... Now, obviously, I had time to answer these questions, okay? So I think this is a good answer. So listen to this. We must recognize that as voters, we sometimes accept a lie when it suits our own self-interest. That is why polls sometimes show that Americans are in favor of throwing everyone out of Congress except their representative, at least among those who know who their representative is. So obviously I can't be in favor of, doing something except or cutting something except for the things that benefit me or the place where I work. But unfortunately, that's why we often accept lies from politicians. It's become accepted political strategy for politicians to tell voters what we want to hear. and we in turn reward them with elected positions even when we know we're not being told the truth. This is a good question. Why should we believe you're telling the truth? Andy? Why should we believe you're telling the truth? Well, the internet can be a wonderful thing. Okay, so I encourage readers to fact check what I say in this book against multiple credible sources. Now, that's why I included a bibliography in this book. Read the books for yourself. Examine the record. It's all there for anybody to see. And I might add, it's what we should do each time some politician or member of the media says something that doesn't ring true. If you really care, the lies aren't that tough to detect. Do you have a political agenda? Yeah, I do. And I hope you have one too. Here's mine. I want America's present and future leadership to embrace and live up to America's core principles as written by our founding fathers and set forth in our Constitution. In addition, I want the public to vigilantly hold them accountable for doing so. That's my political agenda. Can you provide an example of a situation in our country that disingenuous leadership is enabling right now? Yes, there are many, but one I touched on briefly in the body of this book when I wrote, have you ever heard of a politician speak in favor of a complicated tax code that ordinary citizens would find difficult to understand? Then why do we have a complicated tax code that ordinary citizens find difficult to understand? So think with me here. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but neither am I incredibly stupid. I believe that that most people like me, leading up to April 15th on most years, how should I put this? I think most people are like me and they find that time a bit stressful, okay? Not because we object to paying taxes, but I think a lot of us find it stressful because we fear doing so incorrectly and having to deal with the IRS if we do. The U.S. tax code is so convoluted and just flat out bewildering that there's few people that completely understand it. And yet, many politicians actually derive power from it. Through the years, congressional representatives and senators have manipulated the tax code for tons of reasons, okay, such as accepting donations or helping powerful members of their districts back home. In any case, a complex tax code provides a certain cover for shady wheeling and dealing at election time. Therefore, there's not much incentive for politicians to simplify the process. I mean, we had a governor a number of years ago, but it wasn't too long ago. We had a governor that went to prison, and you know, I am just amazed that this went on for years and years and years and years and years. But the guy, when he graduated from college, immediately ran for public office, and he won. Okay? And so after that, he got reelected, ran for something else, all the way to governor, right? All the way to governor. My point is, he was in public service from the time he got out of college. Never had a a normal job. And when he went to prison, he was worth millions. How does this happen? I thought it was kind of, I still think it's kind of funny that people are after, they want to see the president's tax returns. And they probably should see his tax returns. But personally, I don't care as much about seeing the tax returns of a billionaire who went into public service. What I really would like to see is I would like to see the tax returns of all these people who were normal people who went into public service and became millionaires and billionaires. That's the tax returns I want to see. Okay, here's the last question. Who would you elect president? That's what people ask me. And my answer is Abraham Lincoln, but he won't run again. Beyond that, I'm searching for that one special person who can look us in the eye while telling us the painful truth in such a way that still manages to resonate with voters. So I know that's a tough order, but it can be done. It's communication. It can be done, especially if smart people will get involved in that voting process. What are we wanting to create? What do we want to become? Where do we go from here? It's funny, I was watching an interview. It's either the governor of Wyoming or the ex-governor of Wyoming. But they were talking to him, and he's like not running for anything else. He did that for 2 terms, and he's not running for anything else. And he said, and the guy interviewing him said, "Why don't you run for something else, man? We really need you." And he said, he said, there should not be professional politicians. He said, I got in to serve, and now it's somebody else's turn to serve. And the person that was interviewing made the comment, which I thought was very astute, said, it's amazing you won't run because of your character and because of your principles. You won't run again, and yet you're the kind of person we wish would run again. And I understand that, but the founding fathers did not expect professional politicians. We were supposed to. We wanted to have the best and the brightest. I've had the opportunity, and this is the last thing I'll say, and then we're through. I've gone way too long. There is a local politician, and he is a friend of mine. His name is Sandy Stimpson. And Sandy Stimpson, for years, people were trying to get him to run for governor, trying to get him to run for Senate, and he wouldn't do it. And then he called me one day, it's like 6 years ago now, or probably 7 years ago, and said, "Hey, I'm running for mayor of Mobile." I'm like, really? They want you to be governor? They want you to be senator? You're running for mayor? What's that about? And he said, I don't know that I can make a difference in the state house. I don't know if I can make a difference in D.C., but I know what to do here. I know how to make this work. I know how to help people prosper. I know how to bring jobs into this area. I know what to do. And he's done an unbelievable job. Unbelievable job. And has taken hits that make me mad. He handles them very well. But I looked at the beginning and I said, okay, so why is he running? Because, you want to ask that. Why is somebody running? And I'm not sure that we necessarily accept what they say, but I looked at Sandy and I said, Polly and I talked about it. I said, why is he running? Well, why do people run? Well, is he running for power? Yeah, I'm not sure he's running for power because, he's been he owned big companies, and I'm not sure how much power there is, being mayor. So he's probably not running for power. Is he running to make money? No, he's fine there. So it's like, well, why is he running? Well, the only thing we could come up with was that he wanted to help and thought he could. And he has. He's done an unbelievable job. Anderson Cooper came into Mobile and interviewed Sandy Stimpson for 60 Minutes. That hasn't aired yet, but I've heard all about the interview. I've heard which direction that could have taken, which direction they could have taken that. And, Sandy's whole thing has been one Mobile, one culture, to create the best. And it has been awesome to see what he has done. So it's not national government, but it certainly has affected our area, and has been awesome to see. So these books are available. 7 more days. You can get them for $11 here, andyandrews.com, and or you can get the audio version that I did a few years ago, the same amount, and the curriculums are free. Thank you, guys. Sorry I went long today, but this is the only one we're doing this week, the only Blue Plate special on this week. Pass us around. We'd appreciate it. And keep up with us. Good things are going to happen. Good things are going to happen. I appreciate you guys being my friend. Bye-bye.